Good day, everyone. You know, because of what I do and what I have been doing for the past 4 to 5 years, it requires me to be indoors, I would say, more often than the average individual. Now, on top of that, I don't have a burning desire to be out at entertainment venues. I can enjoy them just as much as the next person, but if I miss out on a concert or sporting event or comedy show or some theatrical performance, I'll be all right. I'm more into being out in nature anyway, to be honest. Now, some have been living a certain lifestyle and have grown accustomed to a certain way of life. And obviously, for many of them, all that has changed. And that is, for the most part, because people are in their homes for what could be an extensive period of time. I'm beginning to think that people are starting to use a stock run to the supermarket as an excuse to get out the house. Every person is different. Some people cannot be confined, whereas others are okay with confinement as long as they can be kept occupied. There are those of you who are in solitary confinement, and some of you are okay with that as well. But there are those who won't be able to hold it together. And I'm not talking about the rebel who will not be shut in. I'm talking about the people who break psychologically. There is another illness that may be beginning to spread. It is another unseen force that may be beginning to plague many homes around the globe. It is a sickness that infects the minds of mankind, leading to a path of anxiety and mania. It's what some call the fever. Now, we all know that cabin fever is an expression, a figure of speech, the origin of which is truly unknown. However, it may have developed in the early 1800s, and by the 1900s was used to refer to what we call claustrophobia, or some form of it, something we didn't really consider until now. I mean, if you're out in the woods and are forced to stay indoors due to a sudden snowstorm, I'm sure at some point there would be a sudden storm of emotions that follow. And cabin fever, the symptoms are very real. A few years ago, I presented what you need to know about tapping and energetic cleansing. And I discussed a technique developed by Dr. Roger Callahan called tapping or thought field therapy. If you don't know what thought field therapy is, let me explain this. There exist therapies such as acupuncture or acupressure, and the idea here is you have this energy that is traveling throughout your body. Call it electrical. It is tied to your nervous system and subconscious. When you are ill or are experiencing pain, a needle or pressure applied to a certain meridian or a pressure point on the body stimulates that energy in an attempt to correct the flow of that energy, therefore allowing the body to heal. Now, according to Roger, distress such as anger, anxiety, guilt, grief, addictions or bad habits, and fears, phobias, all these things are connected to what he calls the thought field, an energetic field of the body that, when disrupted, brings to the surface these negative emotions. The way it works is, let's say you are experiencing an overwhelming amount of anxiety. You would rate your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10. Then you would focus on that feeling. This is to make sure you are in the thought field for what you are about to do next. And using an algorithm involving a few muscle and auditory cues while using 2 fingers to tap certain meridian points on the body, you should be able to dissipate or pulse out that blockage or perturbation of energy. The tapping sends sort of a shock wave through the energy channel. So, while you are all thinking about that, let me present to you what Roger says is the root cause to emotional distress. And I do agree with what he says here. It is what I call a perturbation in a thought field. As you may know, in physics and astronomy, the term perturbation indicates a disturbance in or difference from the norm, and it implies a random quality. But in thought field therapy, the perturbation is hardly random. It is a unique entity that contains active information, a quantum physics concept, of a highly specific sort, a subtle but clearly isolable aspect of the thought field that is responsible for triggering negative emotions. The psychological upset is due not to trauma or the loss of a love, for example. These experiences give rise to the perturbation, but it is the perturbation itself that is responsible for generating, guiding, and controlling all of the fundamental changes within the body, influencing the chemicals, hormones, neural pathways, and cognitive and brain activity that result in the experience of a specific negative emotion such as fear, anger, or depression. When you are grieving, when you are compulsively overeating, or when you are anxious, there is a perturbation in a thought field. The perturbation holds the information that governs these and all negative or disturbing emotions. You truly do want to read the book to get the full understanding and benefit of this technology. It's called Tapping the Healer Within, using thought field therapy to instantly conquer your fears, anxieties, and emotional distress. Now, 2 of the most common emotional stressors that affect people who are in self-quarantine, isolation, or just keeping themselves shut in are irritability and restlessness. In other words, you get cranky and it's hard to sleep at night. Some of the other symptoms include food cravings, increase in daytime napping, weight fluctuations, sadness or depression, lack of concentration and patience. You may be a bit snappy with others. You may find it difficult to start up a new project. You may be able to see a breakdown in the infrastructure or functioning of your home. Also, a symptom that many people are unaware of is, in times like this, there is an increase in weird dreams. I'm sure many of you have ideas about how to remedy cabin fever: watching movies, virtual hangouts, virtual dates, virtual dinner parties, virtual cocktail hours, cosplay, home improvement projects, exercising, reading, writing, painting, drawing, meditation, cleaning up, puzzles, games, video games. Some of you play instruments, getting on the phone with a buddy, cooking, gardening. You have to eat as healthy as possible. Eating garbage is not going to help you feel better. It will make it worse. You'll be amazed at how eating a quality cooked meal feels when you are in a stressed state of mind. You know what's interesting? And think about this. Think about all the stories people are going to have for you when you are finally able to comfortably go back out in public. They are going to have a mouthful. There was an entertaining report I read through called the Cabin Fever Chronicles in the Tucson Sentinel. And in that report are a series of short stories of what people are experiencing in these times. One person writes, "I just took a walk up and down the stairs and to the back of the building in which I live. My neighbors just greeted a group of about 10 people at their door. 3 people are schlepping a cooler up the stairs. A few people are shaking hands with each other and introducing themselves. At first I thought, oh, neat, a little get-together and people meeting new people. And then I remembered where I was and when I was. And I thought, what the dickens are they thinking? Another person writes, we held a family meeting last night, and after some drinks, tears, and swearing, decided that we are going to go the full social distance for a few weeks. It feels like the responsible thing to do, and we're fortunate that we are able to do it. So, we won't be doing any play dates or social gatherings. If you see us walking down the street or out on a hike, we'll wave from afar. I'll be working from home. The bug isn't going to kill us, but I can't say the same for each other. If you don't hear from me for a few days, send help. The comment I found most interesting, however, comes from a city councilman. Listen to what he has to say. Please take some time, yes, out in public, to support our local businesses. People are losing their jobs as a result of how many of us are avoiding crowded places. Order to go, or find a table away from others. It's important that we don't react ourselves into a recession. Support of local businesses supporting your neighbor. I have spoken to some local restaurant owners, and many are voluntarily spacing tables to meet the Pima County health advice on social distance. That's probably a better choice to give your business to than the ones across the street that's ignoring the recommendations coming from the docs. Your neighbor is the other piece of the local Tucson start this week. We have all seen the descriptions of who is most vulnerable to the virus. It's the seniors among us. Risk is multiplied if they have existing health conditions. As well, social isolation can have extremely negative health and psychological effects. My mom lived alone, and I very often wondered if she was just lonely. Social isolation can cause it, and other severe effects. Please pick up the phone and call your neighbor or family member if they have to be more homebound than usual due to the virus. You can drop off a meal or some flowers, some way to just keep them connected so they know they're cared for and cared about. The bug is bad enough. Let's each stay focused on how we might play a part in minimizing the collateral damage that may result from our own acting to avoid its effects. So, what in tarnation is going on, folks? Do they want us out in public or not? I don't think Mr. Councilman really understands how viruses work, now does he? No. Now, this cabin fever does not only apply with being stuck at home. It is not the only thing aiding the emotional distress. But because we are dealing with an infectious disease, it is the social distancing. It is the bars and restaurants being shut down. It is people being prevented from going to work or being laid off. It is the schools being shut down, keeping kids at home and parents carrying a lot more responsibility when it comes to their schooling. Some people have lost their means of spacing from their spouse or partner, or just a family member or friend they are not used to being stuck with. I think the greatest fear in all of this is not so much if people can cope with being in a lockdown scenario, but for how long? How long can we all live like this? That is the question. Because things are not going to return to normal overnight. No one is going to ring a bell or snap their fingers and say, okay, everybody back to work, back to your normal lives. No. Things are going to slowly open back up, if some of them do open back up at all. The damage has been done when it comes to certain things. Lives have been permanently changed and shifted. You know, from the way things are going, it does look like we are in for several more weeks of being in some type of lockdown. Let's pray that the lockdowns don't get too severe. For the most part, from what I have been seeing, the majority of people are handling it pretty well. There are fears of infecting their loved ones. They want to be cautious and not to take any chances with that. Unfortunately, there are those who will run out of sanity. They won't be able to hold it together, and the fear will vanish. But at least you all will have better knowledge and understanding of how to deal with such cabin fever. It's not just about being stuck inside. It's about not being able to have access to what you used to have access to. It's about not being able to escape to places where you could before. It's about having your resources limited. So folks, read Dr. Callahan's book on thought field therapy. Keep your other therapeutic practices handy and in use. Remember, when it comes to your mental health, drugs are not the answer. I know some of you need certain medicines. That's fine. For others, good clean food is the substance you want to consume. I want to take some time to discuss this subject to remind you all that many people are going through the same things right now. We are not alone in our trials and tribulations. There are ways to naturally cope and deal with the emotional issues that develop as a result of cabin fever. And the most powerful of these remedies is energetic. I do appreciate everyone tuning in. I will have another presentation up shortly. Until then, you all know how I feel about you guys. So stay awake, stay aware, stay safe in your crowded or uncrowded homes, and I'll talk to you all soon.